Alright, now I've sat in here and talked about Big Wolf on Campus. It's time for me to tell you my top 10 favorite episodes of Big Wolf on Campus. But first, some honorable mentions. Stone Free, the Mertonator. Thanks. What's the story, Morning Corey? Stormy Weather, Anti-Claus is coming to town, Voodoo Child, Rob, Zombie, Apocalypse Soon, Game Over, Big Bad Wolf, Interview with a Werewolf, Stalk Like an Egyptian, Stage Fright, and The Pilot. Those are my honorable mentions. Now we'll start with my top 10. The first one I have on here is actually 2 episodes. I did it a couple times. The other one is a 2-parter, so it connects to one story. This one I did it because it has the same antagonist. And I kind of want to talk about these episodes. And that's Butch Comes to Shove / Butch is Back. At number 10. And Butch Comes to Shove has Tommy and Merton both in detention. After Tommy, as a Pleasantville werewolf, attacks TNT when they're bullying Merton. Merton takes credit for it in front of Hugo and he gets detention. Tommy gets busted for chewing gum in the hallway, which I never understood why schools were so against chewing gum. I never got. They were like, it was like a it was like the worst thing you could do in school is chew gum. I never got that. Right? It's gum. But they mention it here, which harkens back to my childhood, of course. And while in detention, they are showed this 1950s It's 1950s video from the 1950s where it's one of those. This is Butch. Butch is a bad egg. You know what happens to bad eggs? One of those things. And after Hugo falls asleep, Tommy decides they're going to get out of there. They leave, and Butch decides to jump out of the film. It's on a projector. I guess that's how it... back in school they had projectors. It's on a projector. He jumps out, and he goes on this... He's out to find a new girl, of course, because Mary, who's the character in the film, doesn't want anything to do with him. So he jumps out to find a new girl, which, of course, is Stacy. He wants to take her into the film world, but Tommy shows up as a werewolf, and Stacy is conveniently knocked out during this part. And Mary ends up tricking Butch, convincing him to come back into the movie. If he does, she'll go out with him. He goes back in and immediately gets in trouble. Butch is Back takes place 1 year later, and this time Merton is watching a sci-fi film. And it stars the 3 leads that were in the school film, but in different roles. They're space explorers, but they're the same characters. I don't get it. But Butch is Butch decides he wants to escape, and eventually he does. And this time he goes after Lori, actually taking her back into the world and destroying the plug for the projector in the process. So they're stuck there. But eventually they get the projector working again, and Tommy and Merton go into the movie after Lori, and they knock him into a radioactive crater and take Lori back to the real world. Butch escapes from the movie again with radioactive powers and faces off against the Big Wolf team. Eventually, he gets knocked back into the projector, and they turn it off. And Merton decides he's going to start watching his old movies on the old TV where they can't escape. Although there is a mention of something that didn't happen, and I wish it did, because they're always kind of meta with stuff like this, but it never happened. And that's that, because it's kind of like the whole, at the end of Blaming on the Haim, where he mentions where he is writing a note, or a letter, to Corey Feldman, and then eventually Corey Feldman shows up. It's, continuity. Here, they ask if they'll ever see Butch again, and he says if they do, he'll probably be on their side, taking on a bigger antagonist, standard threequel type plot. That never happens. I kind of wanted to see that, but it never happened. These 2 episodes on their own are pretty good. And they stand as a sort of Butch duology, if you will. Number 9, She Will Rock You. Now, I already sort of talked about this with Stone Free. It comes after this, but yes. Just a quick run through again. Merton has a crush on the new girl, Melissa. It turns out she's Medusa. She wants Tommy because she finds out he's a werewolf. Tommy goes to tell Merton, but Merton has found comfort in Lori, and they end up kissing. But Tommy has told Melissa that he is not over Lori. So Melissa or Medusa decides she's going to turn Lori to stone. This also entangles Tommy, who gets caught in a trance, but Merton jumps in the way and gets turned into stone. It's really the only cliffhanger finale we had in the series. I remember it very well. I remember being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Turning in the next Saturday, and it was a rerun. I was like, because I didn't get the concept of season finales and stuff like that at the point. It was really Boy Meets World that got that, but I was just like, wow, wow. But yeah, number 8, being Tommy Dawkins from season 3. This episode, Bucky Offendorf is this bully that used to torment Merton years ago, and it's Merton's fault that, it's Bucky's fault because Bucky did the stuff, but Merton ratted on him for giving an entire family of kids swirlies, and thus he got sent to juvie. Years later, he's now out and wants revenge on Merton. Merton goes to hide in a storage closet and finds a portal to Tommy's mind, much like being John Malkovich, which is what it's based on. Eventually, he finds out he can control Tommy and uses that to his advantage to kind of be the werewolf and intimidate Bucky. However, Merton, in doing this, so happy that they finally got one over on Bucky, doesn't make sure that no one's looking when he leaves, and Bucky finds the secret portal, takes over Tommy's body, and goes after Merton. It eventually evolves into a fight, all 2 members of Team Big Wolf, inside Tommy's head. It was a really cool moment is when Tommy gets in there, because they can see through the screen what Tommy's seeing. When he gets in there, it just goes black, which makes sense. But it would have been weird if all of a sudden we see shots of the fight like that they're doing, and it's like what Tommy sees, you know what I mean? But it makes sense that we go black. And there's also a subplot where Merton helps Tommy. Merton's inside his head, helps Tommy ask Lori on a date. Doesn't end up working, but yeah. Number 6, Time and Again. This one is an episode from season 1, and Merton is striking out with girls. He's approached by a strange man in a all-yellow suit and hat who gives him a watch and says, "Wouldn't you like to redo those last 30 seconds?" He does, and he gets the girl. However, this guy makes a deal with Merton that every time he uses the watch, he takes a little bit of his wisdom. And Merton keeps constantly reusing the watch, to the point where Merton becomes an idiot. And eventually Tommy has to step in and tell him, you gotta stop doing it, but he's still a little bit smart enough to trick Tommy into saying I already gave it back to him, but it doesn't work. Eventually he loses the girl because he's so stupid, and it boils down to, and you knew something was going to happen because Stacy finds out that Tommy's a werewolf. and then the watch is smashed, and it rewinds everything to the moment before Merton got the watch, which erases, Stacy finding out. So, I don't know, I hate when episodes do that, but I always like this kind of time rewind type episodes, so that's why it's number 7. Number 6, Don't Fear the Reaper. And this one is memorable because it's got this I don't know, message or just a sort of underlying tone where it's the Grim Reaper. It is death that you are running from. Walking through the park, Tommy sees the Grim Reaper assaulting an old man, which it's the old man's time to go. He's there to collect his soul. But Tommy doesn't realize that and gets in the middle of it and stops the old man from being taken. However, now that he's done that, he's on death's list and death wants his soul instead. But I always thought, and this is a little bit of a review, isn't there rules? Like he said, oh, you owe me one soul, so I will take yours. And I'm just like, yeah, but it was it was the old guy's time to go. Like, you can't just change the rules, right? I'm not saying he's a Grim Reaper, but you can't just change the rules and be like, oh, the old guy ran away. You're the Grim Reaper. Just find him again and take his soul, right? It makes sense as part of the show to go after Tommy because that's what you would do. But it just, why does he get the old man's soul and still go after Tommy? Is what I'm saying. Because why is Tommy's soul the one that he's owed now when the old man is still his time to die, right? I'm just saying. But overall, eventually, they set up this fake death with fake spikes where Tommy is fake killed, and okay, he's dead. But the one thing that always confused me was that it's the Grim Reaper. Shouldn't he know whether or not someone's actually dead? I'm just saying. Disney episode number 6. Number 5, Imaginary Fiend. And this one, Merton is got this big box of stuff when he was a kid. He's given bunches of stuff to charity. But unbeknownst to him, inside this box is also his imaginary friend, Vince, who is this green-clad scallywag type guy with plasma bolts, I don't know, who loves the board game Clue. Upon being freed from the box, he tracks down Merton and tries to be his friend again. Merton is overgrown imaginary friends and says that Tommy is his friend now. He has real friends. At the same time, Tommy and Lori try going out again, but this is interrupted by Merton, who is trying to save Tommy from Vince because he's told Vince that Tommy's his friend, so Vince wants to get rid of Tommy. Repeat after me. Vince won't hurt. Repeat after me. I won't hurt Tommy. Vince will hurt. Okay, this is not working. I love that line. Eventually, they trick him with a game of Clue and lock him back in the box. But they didn't lock it. So he just goes to find some other kid. It seems like they wanted to put a fight at the end, but they could have just talked to him and be like, Vince, I'm all grown up. It's time for you to find a new imaginary friend. Someone who can appreciate you. You know? I mean, we can still be friends, but you need someone who's going to be available to you to be your friend. And I have my own friends now. You know? Stuff like that. No, they got a big fight scene where both Lori and Tommy kick the imaginary friend into the box. And the thing is, they can't see him until after Vince hits them. So, my question is, I know Merton probably didn't know this, but if he would have technically they hit Tommy, but if Tommy didn't believe that there was somebody else, he thought Merton, okay, never mind. But yeah, it's a good episode. Number 5. Number 4, Tommy Dawkins. And this one is a time travel episode, which is why I like it so much. Tommy and Merton are trying to track down this wormhole in the park, in the forest, in the park, whatever. They run across this guy named Boris, who's pretending to be an American, but he's clearly a Russian. And he's clearly up to something. They find the wormhole, they go back to 1969, doesn't make any sense. They go back to the 80s or something, I don't know. And, yeah, because they talk about the Cold War. And they don't realize this Boris has followed them back there and has given government secrets to the Russians from back in that time. I think it's actually 89. So yeah, and the Russians at that time. So when Tommy Merton come back, it's no longer Pleasantville, it's Pleasant Grad, and Boris is this high official in this Russian environment, Russian army or whatever. And so Tommy and Merton must find a way to get back through the wormhole to change things. There's a subplot in which they're back in 1989. Tommy wants to write a letter to himself to warn him about being bit by the werewolf, but it doesn't happen. Although we do see that Merton becomes a goth earlier than he's supposed to, but it doesn't seem to affect anything. At least like I said, most of these episodes are Monster of the Week episodes, and a lot of the consequences don't carry over. Although there are some continuity in some of the stuff, but it's just, a lot of stuff doesn't carry over, but it's just, time travel. Time travel! As the Hulk would say. It's just, yeah. Decent episode. Boris is stuck in 1989, and I guess he's sent to the Looney Bin, but Tommy's never able to warn his past self of anything, but it works out in the end. One of my favorites. Number 3, Dances Without Wolves. This is one of the ones from season 3, where it's just random. Tommy's had enough of having to go fight bad guys, and it's ruining his football career. They say he missed one more practice, he's out. And he wishes, I wish I was never the werewolf. So he gets his wish. He now has a football injury where his knee is messed up. Someone else is the football star, the name is Troy or something. It turns out he's also the werewolf. He and Merton aren't friends. He and Laurie barely know each other. And so he has to figure out exactly what's going on. Eventually he finds out that it's his teammate that's the werewolf. And he has designs on Laurie. He saves Laurie, but gets bit himself and becomes a werewolf. Becomes a werewolf once again and saves the day, and then everything resets. But just having to explain everything. And this is the one where Tommy actually does the movie reference and says it's like the Family Man starring Nicolas Cage. What happened? And then he starts like, about the box office stuff. No, in the movie, and Nicolas Cage gets to live in a life where he married his high school sweetheart or something like that. I haven't seen the movie, but yeah, something like that. And I kind of like that reverse of the situation. Yeah. Number 2, Manchurian Werewolf / Manchu Part 2. And this one I was like watching. The Werewolf Syndicate, who first appeared in the previous episode in season 2, have decided, they offered Tommy to join them. He said no. But Tommy is an alpha, which means he's the only one that can make more werewolves. They use hypnotic suggestion to turn him into their slave, basically. With the code word, or the code phrase, pizza's here. Gil's fault. So every time someone says pizza's here, he awaits orders. And so he is ordered to bite the first person he sees, which is Laurie. He bites her. She becomes an evil werewolf. And the first part ends with him and Merton in a dungeon. Eventually they get out and they concoct a plan. Well, now I guess this isn't the first part too. He pretends to bite Merton so they can get in, and they end up being captured. Eventually they get out. They want to save Laurie. Laurie doesn't want to be saved. She actually wants to take over the Werewolf Syndicate and she beats up their leader, she becomes a new leader. And then Tommy takes her on, and eventually they turn her back with Wolfsbane. And so Tommy becomes a new leader, and he tells them not to be evil anymore, and stuff like that. Although eventually they do return in a finale, but I'm just saying, not gonna be evil anymore. And eventually we find out that Merton stick the werewolf eating vampire on them, and that depleted most of their people. And then Gil is in charge of creating new werewolves, and that backfires. But yeah, it's a great two-parter. Yeah, it's a great two-parter. Go watch it. Number 1, blame it on the Haim. Yes, Corey Haim has come to town. Corey Haim? I can't. It's Corey Feldman and Corey Haim fused together. Corey Haim. No, So Corey Haim was coming to town to film a new vampire movie, and he wants Laurie to be his co-star. However, what the gang doesn't know is Haim is actually a vampire. I think they explained that he was bitten on the set of The Lost Boys, I guess. Which they don't bring up again in the later one, but what if Corey Feldman was the one who bit him? That would have been a great twist. But anyway, and really, he has this dark vampirish form, which is cool looking, and the makeup's great. But Haim doesn't get that. He just gets that. Or Feldman doesn't get that. And later, I was like, but I always like this one because I'm a Corey Haim fan. You know, the two Corys, I like them. This is before I really got to know them. But I always like this episode because, especially now, just the, you know, the action, the music they play, Hand of Fate, but bio, but Hand of Fate, but just the music they play, the fight scenes in this is pretty good. Tommy versus Haim, which is not really Haim, it's the stuntman with the mask, but I'm just saying, it's pretty good. The defeat where Haim gets staked, and he says the line, "There goes my comeback." And then they have to rescue Merton. I think it's too late, but he's really messing with him. But yeah, it's a great episode. That's number 1 on my list. So what are your thoughts on my list? Top 10 favorite Big Wolf on Canvas episodes in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.